So, if you remember, Mr. and Mrs. Twit have left to go and buy some guns, and they've left the monkeys here in the cage. And then the next chapter is called Mugglewump Has an Idea. As soon as Mr. and Mrs. Twit had disappeared down the road, the monkeys all flipped back onto their feet the right way up. "Quick, get the key, Mugglewump," called the roly-poly bird, who was still sitting on the roof of the house. "What key?" shouted the roly-poly bird. "The key to the door of our cage," cried Mugglewump. "It's hanging on a nail in the workshed. That's where he always puts it." The roly-poly bird flew down and came back with the key in his beak. Mugglewump reached a hand through the bars of the cage and took the key. He put it in the lock and turned it. The door was open. All four monkeys leapt out together. "We are free!" cried the two little ones. "Where shall we go, Dad? Where shall we hide?" "Don't get excited," said Mugglewump. "Calm down, everybody. Before we escape from this beastly place, we have one very important thing to do." "What?" they asked him. "We're going to turn those terrible Twits upside down." "We're going to do what?" they cried. "You must be joking, Dad." "I'm not joking," Mugglewump said. "We're going to turn both Mr. and Mrs. Twit upside down with their legs in the air." "Don't be ridiculous," the roly-poly bird said. "How can we possibly turn those two maggoty old monsters upside down?" We can," cried Mugglewump. "We are going to make them stand on their heads for hours and hours, perhaps forever. Let them see what it feels like for a change." "How?" said the roly-poly bird. "Just tell me how." Mugglewump laid his head on one side, and a tiny twinkly little smile touched the corners of his mouth. "Now and again," he said, "but not very often, I have a brilliant idea. This is one of them. Follow me, my friends, follow me." He scampered off towards the house, and the three other monkeys and the roly-poly bird went after him. "Buckets and paintbrushes," cried Mugglewump. "That's what we want next. There are plenty in the workshed. Hurry up, everyone. Get a bucket and a paintbrush." Inside Mr. Twit's workshop, there was an enormous barrel of hug-tight glue, and the stuff he used for catching the birds. "Fill your buckets," Mugglewump ordered. "We are now going into the big house." Mrs. Twit had hidden the key to the front door under the mat, and Mugglewump had seen her doing it, so it was easy for them to get in. In they went, all four monkeys and their buckets of sticky glue. Then came the roly-poly bird, flying in after them, with a bucket in his beak and a paintbrush in his claw. The great glue painting begins. "This is the living room," announced Mugglewump. "The grand and glorious living room where those two fearsome, frumptuous freaks eat bird pie every week for supper." "Please don't mention bird pie again," said the roly-poly bird. "It gives me the shudders." "We mustn't waste any time," cried Mugglewump. Hurry up. Now the first thing is, I want everyone to paint sticky glue all over the ceiling. Cover it all. Smear it in every corner." "Over the ceiling?" they cried. "Why the ceiling?" "Never mind why," shouted Mugglewump. "Just do as you're told and don't argue." "But how are we going to get up there?" they asked. "We can't reach." "Monkeys can reach anywhere," shouted Mugglewump. He was in a frenzy of excitement now, waving his paintbrush and his bucket and leaping around all over the room. Come on, jump on the tables, stand on the chairs, hop on each other's shoulders. Roly-poly bird can do it flying. Don't stand there gawping. We have to hurry. Don't you understand that? Those terrible Twits will be back any moment, and this time they'll have guns. Get on with it, for heaven's sake. Go on with it." And so the great glue painting of the ceiling began. All the other birds who had been sitting on the roof flew in to help, carrying paintbrushes in their claws and beaks. There were buzzards, magpies, rooks, ravens, and many more. Everyone was splashing away like mad, and with so many helpers, the job was soon finished. The carpet goes on the ceiling. "What now?" they all said, looking at Mugglewump. "Aha!" cried Mugglewump. "Now for the fun. Now for the greatest upside-down trick of all time. Are you ready?" "We're ready," said the monkeys. "We're ready," said the birds. "Pull out the carpet," shouted Mugglewump. "Pull this huge carpet from under the furniture and stick it on the ceiling." "Onto the ceiling?" cried one of the small monkeys. "But that's impossible, Dad." "I'll stick you to the ceiling if you don't shut up," snapped Mugglewump. "He's Dotty," they cried. "He's balmy, he's batty, he's nutty, he's screwy, he's wacky," cried the roly-poly bird. "Poor old Muggles has gone off his wump at last." "Oh, do stop shouting such rubbish and give me a hand," said Mugglewump, catching hold of the corner of the carpet. "Pull it, you nitwits, pull!" The carpet was enormous. It covered the entire floor from wall to wall. It had a red and gold pattern on it. It was not easy to pull an enormous carpet off the floor when the room is full of tables and chairs. "Pull!" yelled Mugglewump. "Pull, pull, pull!" He was like a demon, hopping around the room and telling everyone what to do. But you couldn't blame him. After months and months of standing on his head with his family, he couldn't wait for the time when the terrible Twits would be doing the same thing. At least that's what he hoped. With the monkeys and the birds all pulling and puffing, the carpet was dragged off the floor and finally hoisted up to the ceiling, and there it stuck. All at once the whole ceiling of the living room was carpeted in red and gold. The furniture goes up. "Now the table, the big table," shouted Mugglewump. "Turn the table upside down and put a dollop of sticky glue on the bottom of each leg. Then we shall stick that to the ceiling as well." Hoisting the huge table upside down and onto the ceiling was not an easy job, but they managed it in the end. "Will it stay there?" they cried. Is the glue strong enough to hold it up?" "It's the strongest glue in the world," Mugglewump replied. "It's the special bird-catching, bird-killing glue for smearing on trees." "Please," said the roly bird, "I have asked you before not to mention that subject. How would you like it if it was monkey pie every Wednesday, and all your friends had been boiled up, and I went on talking about it?" "I do beg your pardon," said Mugglewump. "I'm so excited I hardly know what I'm saying. Now the chairs. Do the same with the chairs. All the chairs must be stuck upside down to the ceiling and in their right places. Oh, do hurry up, everybody. Any moment those two filthy freaks are going to come rushing back in with their guns." The monkeys, with the birds helping them, put glue on the bottom of each chair leg and hoisted them up to the ceiling. "Now the smaller tables," shouted Mugglewump, "and the big sofa, and the sideboards, and the lamps, and all the tiny little things, the ashtray, the ornaments, and that beastly plastic gnome on the sideboard. Everything, absolutely everything, must be stuck to the ceiling." It was terribly hard work. It was especially difficult to stick everything on the ceiling in exactly the right place, but they got it done in the end. "Now what?" asked the roly-poly bird. He was out of breath and so tired he could hardly flap his wings. "Now the pictures," cried Mugglewump. "Turn all the pictures upside down. And will one of you birds please fly out onto the road and watch to see when those frumptuous freaks are coming back?" "I'll go," said the roly-poly bird. "I can sit on the telephone wire and keep guard. It'll give me a rest." The raven swoops over. They had only just finished the job when the roly-poly bird came swooping in, screaming, "They're coming back! They're coming back!" Quickly the birds flew back onto the roof of the house. The monkeys rushed into the cage and stood upside down, one on top of the other. A moment later, Mr. and Mrs. Twit came marching into the garden, carrying fearsome-looking guns. "I'm glad to see those monkeys are still upside down," said Mr. Twit. "They're too stupid to do anything else," said Mrs. Twit. "Hey, look at all those cheeky birds still up there on the roof. Let's go inside and load our lovely new guns, and then it'll be bang, 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 and bird pie for supper." Just as Mr. and Mrs. Twit were about to enter the house, two black ravens swooped low over their heads. Each bird carried a paintbrush in its claw, and each paintbrush was smeared with sticky glue. As the ravens whizzed over, they brushed a streak of sticky glue on the top of Mr. and Mrs. Twit's heads. They did it with the lightest touch, but even so the Twits both felt it. "What was that?" cried Mr. Twit. "Some beastly bird has dropped his dirty droppings on my head." "Mine too," shouted Mr. Twit. "I felt it, I felt it." "Don't touch it," cried Mrs. Twit. "You'll get it all over your hands. Come inside and we'll wash it off at the sink." The filthy, dirty brutes," yelled Mr. Twit. "I bet they did it on purpose. Just wait till I've loaded up my gun." Mrs. Twit got the key from under the doormat, where Mugglewump had carefully replaced it, and into the house they went. Okay, so time to make a prediction. We're nearly at the end of the book. What do you think is going to happen at the end? Okay, and then we can find out on the next video.